Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Jason Mackey's First 10, a quick hit podcast to get you ready for the day. Today is Monday, July 8th. Hopefully, everybody had a wonderful weekend. Paul Skenes and Bryan Reynolds are both All-Stars. The Pirates dropped 2 of 3 to the Mets. They need to win today to split the series, and we're going to get into that as well as my own one-on-one with Mike Sullivan, some Penguins thoughts from over the weekend. Before we do that, I want to remind you that we're sponsored by the North Shore Tavern. You don't have to be a baseball fan to love it there. The interior is wall-to-wall Pirates. There are appetizers, entrees, cocktails, and of course, steak and seafood on a sizzling lava stone. Open every day, the North Shore Tavern across from PNC Park is Pittsburgh's home for steak on a stone. Well, we've got some news in Pirates land. Most of it good, some of it bad. The on-play stuff could certainly stand to improve, as I've heard from many of you about that. Want to start, though, with the All-Star stuff and what to make of Paul Skenes and Bryan Reynolds. I will say this, going into it, that's the outcome I hoped for, I thought was most realistic. I understand the pushback. I was at PNC Park yesterday and hearing from Skenes, Bryan Reynolds, Derek Shelton, and they all echoed the same sentiment that they thought that they had several deserving All-Stars. I'm sure a lot of teams say that, and I won't argue against Mitch Keller, Colin Holderman. They've had excellent seasons, but where the Pirates are at, 5 games under 500, I don't think that equates to 3 All-Stars. I just don't. I am glad that Bryan Reynolds got the nod. He certainly deserved it. What he's done, hilariously, since switching to Toby Keith, Beer for My Horses, has been just outstanding, carrying through a hot June into July and showing once again he's worthy of the contract and one of the National League's best outfielders. So congrats there. The bigger story, though, of course, is Paul Skenes. Does he deserve to go? Of course he does. I mean, that's a silly question in my mind. He's been among the very best starters in Major League Baseball since he made his MLB debut. Just absolutely incredible, the strikeout stuff. Nobody has more strikeouts than Skenes. It's also unprecedented when you think about what Skenes has done, being the only guy taking 1-1 in his draft year and then the next year making the All-Star game. I mean, it's just absolutely astonishing. You can look at Paul's past year, winning a national championship at LSU, going 1-1, making his MLB debut, buzzing through the minor leagues, all of it. And he's taken it all in stride, and he's handled all of it extremely well. But I look at what tends to happen at the All-Star game and what kind of position that might put Paul in. And I understand Major League Baseball's perspective. If you're trying to sell the game, and Paul is going to be an attractive draw. Of course he is. A lot of people want to see him face, whether it's Gunnar Henderson, Juan Soto, Aaron Judge, whatever the case may be. I would make the argument that it's going to be just as fun to see him face any hitter in the American League lineup. But yeah, I mean, people probably won't stick around for the entire game. There's some cachet with being the starting pitcher. If you know he's towing the rubber in the first inning and these are the 3 hitters he's going to face, that's going to be very exciting. I also, that's one part of my brain. That's like the outside world part of my brain. And then the part of my brain that has been entrenched in baseball for as long as it has realizes that baseball might not care about that. Right? We're not talking about a sport that exactly markets itself well or sees itself well compared to the rest of the world. I was texting with somebody last night and making the point, remember the pro rata stuff throughout, COVID and trying to figure out the 2020 season. And it was like a stunning lack of awareness here. And it's almost like, don't you want to be popular? Don't you guys want to be out there? This is your time. And we understand the health concerns, but get on the field, figure it out. Figure out a way to make your game the biggest one in town. So, yes, we can sit here and look at this and say, the obvious reason is to start Skenes, right? How can you can't possibly not start Paul. But I also look at other guys in the National League. Look at the season Chris Sale is having. Ranger Suarez, Zach Wheeler, Reynaldo Lopez, even. I mean, there's been some really, really good starters. And if I look at this from a Pittsburgh perspective or a baseball fan perspective, I'm going to look at it and say, this is how I absolutely sell the game with Paul Skenes starting. If I look at it from a baseball perspective, I say, well, these guys have made 16, 17, 18 starts. They've done what Paul has done almost 2 times over. We're screwing them by not allowing them to start the All-Star game. Now, they might not care. Might not be a big thing. It's not like any of us can go back in our minds and catalog who has started All-Star games in the past, right? I mean, it's not like starting game 1 or game 7 of the World Series. So maybe it's a dynamic we don't need to worry about. But I do think it's interesting that there's that kind of dichotomy in the outside versus the inside. ultimately, and this is what I wrote about at post-gazette.com, I just want Skenes to enjoy the experience. He deserves it. He's carried himself extremely well through all of this, and I hope it's a beneficial experience where he gets to saddle up to some older players. I know he's been looking to do that, gets to pitch in whatever capacity works for him, and I think we're all going to watch and be entertained by it. All right, going to take a short break. I want to get to a little bit more Pirates stuff as well as some Penguins topics here on First 10, but first, a message from our friends at the Bradenton Area Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Embrace the laid-back charm of island life while sinking your toes in the sand and discovering real, authentic Florida in the Bradenton area. Unspoiled beauty and pristine beaches, a vibrant waterfront downtown energized by local arts and culture, fresh Floridian cuisine with a flourish of rich history, and friendly locals ready to welcome you to this preserved paradise on Florida's Gulf Coast. Plan your visit today at BradentonGulfIslands.com.
Welcome back, everybody. Going to finish up with a couple Pirates points I want to make here. And I think the most interesting thing going on with this team right now is its starting rotation. It was a rough week last week for them. Jared Jones goes on the IL, as does Bailey Falter. And we talked a lot this year about look at the top four in the starting rotation and the chance it gives them. Well, that's been offed by 50%. Yesterday, we saw Luis Ortiz look excellent. I'm not sure I've ever seen his slider look better. And it's really cool to see how much he's matured and developed. Curious to see where this goes, too. I don't totally understand what the Pirates have done as far as his usage. I understand the using an opener thing that seemed to work. He's also handling the starting stuff well, so I would just run with that. And to the Pirates' credit, that's what Derek Shelton essentially said after yesterday's game that he would do. I don't know. He made a random appearance a couple days ago in like the 7th or 8th inning, almost like they thought for a day that they'd make him a leverage guy. But right now, given their team needs and where I think this needs to go or will go this season, I mean, he's got to start. He's got to keep starting. And I think this is really going to show if the Pirates have enough pitching depth, right? Remember that storyline from this offseason. Do they have enough? Are they going to add somebody? We're going to find out. Martin Perez was excellent his last time out, but obviously the Pirates are going to need him to continue that versus how he looked in his previous batch of starts. Marco Gonzales probably has another rehab assignment, another rehab outing before he comes back. And he was very good before he got hurt. Let's not forget. So need him to come back and contribute. What you do with Quinn Priester, I don't know, because in all of this, in addition to needing to get Jones healthy, needing to get Falter healthy, you're probably not going to have Skenes going every 5 days. Maybe Mitch because he's more acclimated, but there's going to be an innings limit with Skenes, and you want to avoid a shutdown. So as many guys as you can get in there as possible, to me, it makes sense. But you obviously can't throw anybody who's not productive. Pardon the double negative there. But that's the thing I want to see the most, as well as, I mean, just in the middle of this 10-game stretch with the Pirates, right? Like this, we were talking about how important this was. Homestand, then 3 in Milwaukee. Right now, they're 2-4 in the middle of it. To me, you have to go at least 5-5, which is going to take some work, and we'll see how they do. I'm going to cut the Pirates stuff off, though, because I do want to get to some Penguins topics. I sat with Mike Sullivan in his office on Saturday at the UPMC Lemieux Sports Complex to talk about a few things, and this was an interview request that I made earlier in the offseason. We talked about like USA Hockey stuff, which I didn't write yet. I'm going to save that for a separate piece, some other stuff individual to his team. But what I did write today was a lot about his offseason and some narratives surrounding the team. And Sullivan and I obviously have a pretty good relationship. I know him back from my time on the beat, and now it's in a bit of a different capacity, but I always appreciate his candor and his how he handles these settings. I think it's very good, and he's very honest, I thought. And I asked him, about the Devils rumors and the stuff with problems with Dubas and whatever. I said, don't believe everything you read. You can see all of the quotes in there, but that was one that stood out to me. And part of the point that I made in the piece, one, the column aspect of it was that when Sullivan came up here the first time, a lot of people were down on the Penguins thinking this group was finished or whatever, and he breathed life into the whole thing. Well, they kind of need that again. It's going to be a different task. Mike's a different guy. He's been through a lot, but this group has been counted out before. And so how do you get back to that point? Well, there's several branches to that tree, in my opinion, and I talked about them in the piece. One of the things I thought that this might resonate most with people who watch the Penguins, they need to get younger. They need to get faster. I don't think anybody would deny that. I don't think Sullivan would deny that. It's been an ongoing thing, though, where people say the Penguins need to skate faster. I sort of agree. I agree that they need some foot speed with, younger players, whether that's Valtteri Puustinen, Vasily Ponomarev, whose name I will never get right, by the way. I stumble almost every time. Braden Yeager, Sam Poulin, some guys that I wrote about in there, but an injection of youth. We saw it with Sullivan's first go-around. And he was talking about one of the differences between, I think he was inferring this, between now and then. Those guys, Connor Sherry, Brian Rust, Scott Wilson, Tom Kuhnhackl. I'm probably missing one or two. Obviously, Matt Murray was in that group as well, even Brian Dumoulin. But those guys were prepared to play. One of the things he's been doing with Kyle Dubas, and I wrote about this again, has been going through sort of their development system. He seemed to infer that they haven't done a good enough job developing players recently and having them prepared to contribute at the NHL level. Well, okay. I mean, that's an area that the Penguins can improve for this season. If you can improve development and what you're doing and how you're preparing guys to come up here, there is some talent with the American Hockey League affiliate. Joel Blomqvist is another name that we should be looking for. Obviously not a skater, not a foot speed guy, but the Penguins need to get faster. And Sullivan talked about that and kind of pushed back against some narratives with his team, that they haven't changed anything, that they're not fast or they can't be fast. Even the Tristan Jarry stuff that led to an interesting back and forth with Mike and I about goalie decisions and him riding Alex Nedeljkovic, over Tristan Jarry late in the season. And he said, I think sometimes you guys give us too much credit for the decisions that I make. I don't do a great Sullivan impersonation, but it was interesting. And I said, Mike, it's probably the difference in our jobs, right? You're trying to get down to the very granular, the very exact thing about winning the game in front of you. We're in charge of, kind of creating a narrative. And not that anybody went with anything that was false, but I mean, how do you not look at that situation and think that they've lost faith in Tristan Jarry? I mean, that's the way I look at it. And we're not privy to all the discussions in-house. And Mike said he has talked to Tristan and believed that he's as motivated as ever. And I wrote about that as well. I think that's a very important piece with the Penguins. Anyway, I'm going to pick away at that over the course of the week and some more thoughts with Sullivan. The Penguins be back up in Cranberry, although today I will be over at the ballpark. Thank you for watching this. As always, sorry I went over a little bit, not quite first 10. I guess it's first 12 and a half. Today, make sure you like and subscribe. You can get this and all of the other video content from our Post-Gazette writers and columnists. And we'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.